Low rep dumbbell work is highly underrated, and today I'm going to tell you guys exactly why. What's up guys, Enkiri here, and today I want to talk about dumbbell work, specifically low rep dumbbell work. So lower rep than what you guys are typically used to hearing about or probably doing yourself. I'm saying talking about 5 reps in a set, maybe even a little bit less than that. It's really not typical gym bro usage for dumbbell work, right? It's that they're usually reserved for the higher rep stuff, or at the very least the medium rep stuff, right? So 8 reps, maybe more than that per set, probably usually more than that per set, probably usually sticking around the double digit range, right? Personally, in my own programming, I haven't really gone below 10 reps per set with my dumbbell work in quite some time. And I generally lean more towards that 12 to 15 rep range, both in myself as well as in my clients. And just real quick guys, if you're in the market for a top-notch meal prep company, then be sure to check out FlexPro meals and use code Enkiri Elite for 20% off your order. The link is in the description. The food's legit. It usually arrives in just a couple days. They have a bunch of different high-protein meal options, and it's a really easy and convenient way to help keep your diet and your macros on track. And now, back to your regularly scheduled program. As well, historically, I haven't even done all that much dumbbell work in general, right? With those traditional, typical, standard protocols that I was just talking about, I never really found their value, their overall value as part of the comprehensive program, to be all that great. I could see their role, I saw them for what they were, and I used them. I just didn't use them all that often. I found other implements to be much more valuable overall, just for the most part, right? But something I've actually started trying to make a point of lately is just changing up a lot of the things that I've been doing. And one of those things has just been incorporating more dumbbell work in general, mostly for the upper body. So I've been kind of forcing myself to try to go back to some of these protocols, revisit some of these protocols, and see what I can get out of them, see if my opinions of them change, or if I can tweak things around and find new ways to make them work better for myself as well as for my clients and for you guys too, right? Now, as many of you know, I'm currently chasing a 225-pound strict barbell overhead press, 2 plates overhead. Really, as far as my upper body goals, that's the king. That's all I really care about right now. You know, I got some other stuff that I'm kind of doing tangentially, but really everything that I'm tinkering with is to hopefully, in the long run, nudge that OHP along. It's still kind of a long-ish term goal, I would say. I got 20 pounds to go, but you know, we got a ways to go, guys. So everything that I'm kind of doing, it's with that long-term vision of nudging the barbell overhead press up. And really, I've been using a conjugate style programming as my primary means of achieving this right now. Like I was just kind of getting at, this has led me down rabbit holes, right? Several different rabbit holes in recent history, tinkering with new and different things, and old things, bringing them back in the mix and tweaking them around and seeing what I can get out of them. One of those things in recent history was trying out a max effort, one arm dumbbell overhead press. That was something I'd never done before in my life. It was fun, it was different. I'll probably do it again, honestly, for the hell of it, for the fun factor of it. But I do think that in terms of optimal methods, a heavy single on a dumbbell exercise is probably a little bit too much, a little bit too heavy to really make optimal usage of the dumbbells, to get the most value that you can out of the dumbbells. So kind of what I found after that, I still tinkered with those same concepts, but I went a little bit lighter, right? And what I found was kind of a sweet spot, in my opinion, in the 4 to 6 rep range. And like I said, this is still a pretty good bit lower in terms of reps per set than what you typically see performed or advised in terms of dumbbell work. Now, my caveat here is that, like that overhead press that I was just talking about that I just did, I think these exercises are better done that way. That is, unilaterally. So rather than using 2 dumbbells, you just use one, right? You go one limb at a time, you focus 100% of your effort and your mental energy onto that single limb, and then you switch and you do the other side, same thing, 100% effort on that single limb. So there's a concept called the bilateral deficit. I'm sure that many of you guys have heard of it. This phenomenon refers to the fact that sometimes in certain populations during certain movement patterns, the force produced by two limbs during a bilateral contraction is less than the force that can be produced by each limb individually during unilateral contraction. So we'll say, for example, if I'm pushing with two arms, I can produce 200 units of force, right? Now, you might take one arm at a time, hook me up to whatever machine you want, take one arm at a time and find that individually each limb is capable of producing 110 units of force. In total, that would be 220 units of force. But when you put them together, they are only capable of producing 200 units of force, less than the individual limbs combined can create. That is called the bilateral deficit. Now, this isn't a 100% phenomenon, right? It doesn't happen all the time. It doesn't happen in all people. It can vary wildly, and it can even vary within the same individual. There are a lot of factors that play, a lot of different variables that determine how profound this bilateral deficit can potentially be, up to and including familiarity with a particular movement. Personally, I've never noticed this phenomenon occur with leg work, for example. Even when I was a novice lifter, I never noticed it. Now, I've heard Mike Boyle many years ago when I was still pretty early in the game. I heard Mike Boyle argue that the bilateral deficit, its existence, makes Bulgarian split squats a more productive use of training time, a better way to train the legs as compared to bilateral squats, right? Because you're training one leg at a time and you're not experiencing that bilateral deficit. I disagree with that assertion, but also, like I said, I've never experienced this phenomenon myself during leg training. My unilateral leg work has always been less than half of whatever my bilateral leg work is. Whereas, he is talking about taking athletes. He's talking about athletes being able to take their Bulgarian split squat and have that become well up higher than 50% of their back squat, whatever that number happens to be. Now, I think that the logic that he used to defend his assertion was flawed, but that is a whole different story for a different day. The point, however, is that the bilateral deficit does not seem to apply to me in this case, in the case of leg training, which is not all that unusual of a thing to have happen according to this piece of literature here. However, in stark contrast to that, I have noticed a pretty big difference in force production and, in my subjective opinion, rep quality as well across the board on unilateral upper body pressing exercises. Now, am I saying that everyone will experience these benefits? No, of course not. But it is worth a shot because you may find that, much like me, you are able to get much more productive work out of these heavy unilateral movements than you have been able to get from other dumbbell exercises in the past. Personally, so far, I've experimented with one arm overhead presses. I've done those both standing and seated. I've experimented with one arm dumbbell incline bench presses, and I've experimented with one arm dumbbell flat bench presses. And in that 4 to 6 rep sweet spot, that sweet spot that I was talking about before, I've been consistently finding some incredibly productive work. In my opinion, much more so productive than I've ever gotten from any dumbbell work that I've done before in the past. In fact, it feels so productive to me right now that I have been building entire workouts around this concept. All dumbbell, all unilateral pressing sessions, using a mix of flat, incline, and overhead movements, and then auto-regulating that, using auto-regulation protocols with top sets, right? Working my way up to something challenging, and then coming back down using a little bit of back off work in order to help me accrue some more volume. It's a heck of a lot of fun. It's a good change up For most of us barbell guys, that's guys who primarily like to stick with the barbell or other bilateral implements, it forces you to learn to stabilize the shoulder joints better. It has the added bonus of creating a lot of rotational force about the torso, right? That force, that rotational force needs to be stabilized as well. So you're simultaneously building core strength while you're doing these movements. If you're lying on the bench, you are getting pulled rotationally, right? You have to resist that with an anti-rotational force. If you're standing, if you're doing dumbbell overhead work, you are getting pulled into lateral flexion, which you have to resist with an anti-lateral flexion force. And in my experience so far, in terms of the bilateral deficit, I'm noticing a pretty big difference in strength from limb to limb versus the same movements done bilaterally, done with 2 dumbbells. So for example, I have overhead pressed a 75-pound dumbbell for 5 reps per arm so far. I have incline bench press, an 85-pound dumbbell for 5 reps per arm, and I have flat bench press, a 100-pound dumbbell for 5 reps per arm. Now these numbers aren't crazy or earth-shattering or anything like that, but they're a decent bit higher than the dumbbells that I am capable of using when doing 2 arms at a time on each respective movement pattern. Lastly, there's just something about the rep quality of this unilateral work, man. It's hard to explain, but I can just feel that even at equivalent weights, I'm getting a lot more out of these 1-arm dumbbell exercises than I ever did from 2-arm dumbbell movements. It's intuitive, right? I can just feel it. The reps feel better, the movements feel better and sharper and stronger. I'm able to create a more intense stimulus this way, just in general, and I'm able to really hone in and focus on each limb individually, which allows me to make very good use of these lower rep ranges, and in turn, these heavier dumbbells, and turn these movements, which are typically thought of as more hypertrophy-based exercises, into incredibly viable strength exercises as well. And the somewhat novel stimulus will also no doubt lead to some hypertrophy down the line as I progress as well. It's also worth noting that I'm still really just getting started with these movements, right? I've only done the overhead version like 3 or 4 times so far, I think 4. Same with the incline, I think I've done that 4 times now. And I've only done the flat bench version just 1 time so far. And with the overhead version and the incline version, I've noticed pretty big improvements so far from session to session. So the gains are really still just in their infancy, and it'll be pretty interesting to see how much better and stronger that I can potentially get here, as well as how that will potentially carry back over into bilateral movements and barbell movements. And that's not to say that I think that the carryover of these unilateral exercises into their bilateral and barbell counterparts is going to be the sole determinant of their worth or of their efficacy. But I do think it will be something that's going to be exciting to observe. That said, even if the carryover is minimal, I think that the exercises have already proven themselves to me as standalone units with value in their own right. And I do not think that that fact should be overlooked here. Anyway, if your training needs a boost or a nudge, give some of these exercises a shot, guys. Try putting them into a secondary training session, or use them in a secondary or a tertiary slot in your program. Work your way up to something heavy in that 4 to 6 range, and I think that you're going to be pleasantly surprised with the value that you're able to get out of these low rep unilateral movements. And take your time during your ramp up as you work your way up. They do have a way of going from easy to hard very quickly. So I find that 5-pound jumps honestly work the best for several reasons. You end up doing a lot of sets that way, but I think that's actually a good thing. It lets you groove the pattern very well, and it allows you to accrue a large total workload on the front side of the ramp as you build your way up. A large total workload of very high quality repetitions also. So just looking at my session yesterday, for example, I did the 50-pound bell, 55, 60, 65, 70, and 75, all for 5 reps each set per arm on the 1-arm overhead press. I followed that up with 80, 85, 90, 95, and 100, again, all for 5 reps, this time on the 1-arm dumbbell flat bench press. So that's 11 total sets per arm. That is 55 total reps per arm. My shoulders and my chest are sore as hell today, but in a really good way. So I think that with some earnest effort, you guys are gonna be able to use this method, to unlock both strength and muscle gains that you wouldn't necessarily have found otherwise. And I think that in the long run, your shoulders will be healthier and stronger to go along with that as well. Anyway, that pretty much wraps it up for today, guys. If you enjoy these types of videos or you simply find them informative, please remember to hit the like button before you go. Leave me some love in the comments down below as well. The engagement's really helpful for my channel, guys, so I really appreciate it. And if you find the info here helpful and you just want to throw some support my way, be sure to check out EnkiriEliteFitness.com. Pick up one of my training programs. I've sold a few thousand of my templates over the last couple years, guys, ever since I released them. And the gains, man, the gains that people have reported back to me have just been freaking awesome, guys. So grab up yours today. Hop on that gains train. That's all I got, guys. Keep training hard. I'll catch you all next time.